So welcome everyone to this presentation of an open house event, the National MagLab's Virtual Open House 2021. This actually is being presented in partnership with the FAMU FSU College of Engineering as well for their E-Week celebration. And we are so glad you've found us and decided to join us. I hope you've been catching all of these fun live virtual events that we've been having, hands-on science, try it at home science, talks and scientist speed sessions. We have a whole nother week of activities. So if you haven't found all the things you wanted to find for virtual MagLab open house, I'll put some links for you in the chat. There's some great online games and videos. And like I said, virtual live content this weekend and into next week. So don't miss some of those activities. But today, we're going to hear from one of our MagLab educators who runs our K-12, directs our K-12 programs and summer camps and all those good things. And he's going to share some of his, the strategies that he's learned about expanding STEM inclusiveness. So how do we get everybody interested in STEM and really interested in becoming a scientist, right? So I'm going to let Carlos take it away.
Thanks, Kristen. So I'll just jump right into it and let you know that I am Carlos Villa, the Director of K-12 Education Programs at the MagLab. And just to give you a little background on me, I am the MagLab educator. I'm also a husband and a father of two, including my little girl, my little boy here. I am an FSU grad 2 times. Was born in Managua, Nicaragua. I am a lover of science, a Transformers collector, and I do have a couple. I've got Megatron and Optimus Prime here with me, so they'll make a cameo later on. And I am a Disney fan as well. And if you know what Experiment 626 is, we are on the same wavelength. So, tomorrow, Lissa Anderson's for the scientist speed session. I've got my adverts mixed in with everything else, so. But a quick introduction to the MagLab for everybody that's joining us. So the MagLab is one of 7 magnet labs in the entire world. We are the only one on this side of the planet. The others are in Europe and Asia. And if you compare all of them, we are the largest and the highest powered magnet lab in the world. And we hold, is it 17 world records? Is that right? Yes, 17 world records. And almost all of them are world's strongest blah, blah, blah type of magnets. We're a user laboratory, which means our primary function is to operate the magnets for scientists to come in and use. Over 2,000 users came to us in 2019. We are funded by the National Science Foundation and the state of Florida with a approximate $58 million budget. And the research is free to the scientists. We don't charge them on the condition that they share the research that they are working on. We do research in many fields of science. It's not just all magnet related. The magnets are tools. So we use them to research in material science and physics, engineering, chemistry, biology, geochem, just about every field of science you could possibly imagine we have done in the lab. Of course, we are at 3 different locations: Los Alamos National Lab, Florida State University in Tallahassee, Florida, and University of Florida in Gainesville, Florida. And we are a taxpayer-funded institution funded by the National Science Foundation and the state of Florida, which makes everybody listening to this a stakeholder in our facility. So on behalf of all of us, thank you for supporting our science. And I'm gonna pause for a second and ask everybody that as I'm going into the presentation, if there are any questions that come up, by all means, type them into the chat. Kristen is here and has full permission to interrupt me at any point to ask the questions. But the question is, why do we care about diversity in STEM? And I'm going to give you a couple of different arguments why. I'm going to start with a selfish one first. I'm going to focus on 3 different fields. And what we're looking at here are bachelor degrees that are awarded in 2014, the orange being the male, the yellow being the female. And what we've got here is you can see that some of them are pretty even in the 50 or 60% mix. But if you look at these 3 here, you see that it is not even, and that's engineering, computer science, and physics. So I'm going to focus on those 3 fields and tell you why diversity and inclusiveness is important. I'm going to start with computer science, and I'm going to start with something that I spent way too much time on in 2020, and that's Animal Crossing New Horizons for the Nintendo Switch. In March of 2020, Animal Crossing New Horizons was released to much fanfare. Everybody was looking forward to this. I had no idea what it was going into it, and then I couldn't put it down for months afterwards. You build a character, you live on an island, you build houses, you make neighbors. It's a lot of fun. And you can build your character to be, as you look at the picture here, any style. They can be light skin, dark skin, different types of haircuts. But the problem was that Nintendo, when they released this, they had a diversity of skin tones, but that's as much diversity as they offered. You see, it became immediately apparent that there was no hair that included diversity. And so there was a petition made on change.org asking Nintendo to, hey, this is an issue, you need to rectify it. Now, one thing about video games, especially modern video games, is that you can alter them after the fact. All these games can be updated, which is pretty impressive. So 57,000 votes, they were looking to get 50,000 votes to do this. And the best thing about this petition is it says every person should feel represented, and that's an important thing. In November, and it did take a while, but in November, there was an update to Animal Crossing. And in that update, they included diverse hair. And that was a big step. And some people may not see it as a big step, but if you look at this tweet right here, this shows you just how important this is. It says, we did it. My heart is so full. I can't believe it, but Nintendo listened to us. We got more inclusive hairstyle. I cried when I found out and updated my game. As soon as the update was available, my avatar now looks like me. And that's something that, as being in the position of power, maybe you don't see. But I'll tell you that as a Hispanic man that plays video games, there are not a lot of Hispanic characters in video games. So this small step here is a big step for those of us in the gaming community, because 57% of video game players are going to be people of color in the next 10 years. And that's more than 50%. Additionally, very few games have stories who center on characters of color. And going aside from what's apparent on the surface, 10% of video game players are LGBTQ+. So there's an entire community there that maybe doesn't feel represented. And yes, it's video games, and that's not a game-changing thing. But here's why having more diversity in computer science is important. 2009, Hewlett-Packard looking into claims webcams do not see Black people. Now, that's a pretty big deal. And this was in 2009. I remember hearing this and I was like, oh, okay, it's no big deal. But in 2019, it's still there. It's been 10 years and this hasn't been fixed. And part of the problem is that the people that are writing the code are not people of color, so they may not be thinking about this. And it's just an issue of, hey, if everybody's represented, this is a hurdle that we can get past. So I went from video games, which is fun and light, to something that's a little bit more serious now. And some people may think, well, it's just webcams. Well, no, cameras are all over the place now, including surveillance cameras, cameras on front doors, and being recognized, being seen matters. So let me go to a different field and give you a different argument. And this is going to be the engineering. And this is what we call the crash test bias. And some of you may be familiar with this and some of you may not be. But the crash test dummies that are used by the government, and these are the dummies that they use to find out which cars get the 5-star safety awards and all the best safety features. The crash test dummies represent the 50th percentile of men, 171 pounds, 5'9", and I am not 5'9" and 171 pounds. And of course, 50% of the population is not male. But this has been the standard that all the crash test dummies have been used in the 1970s. I don't need to tell you that men and women have different bodies. They have different shapes, they have different insides. And so the male test dummy does not work for the female test dummy, and there is no female crash test dummy. They've been asking for it since the 80s, and there has not been one. Why does this matter? female drivers and right-front passengers are 17% more likely to be killed in a car crash than a male occupant of the same age. Any seatbelt wearing female occupant has 73% greater odds of being seriously injured in a frontal car crash than a male occupant in the same kind of crash. You see, the crash test dummy and the seatbelt that protects it has been based on the male physiology. And that's great for the men, but it doesn't protect the women as well. Let's go to physics now. Surely physics doesn't matter in diversity. I mean, it's just thinking about stuff. Well, yes, it does matter. You see, when you're thinking about physics, you want the best minds thinking about these problems. Intellectual progress depends on attracting the very best brains, both male and female. And when you cut out the female, you're immediately cutting out 50% of the best brains available to solve today's science questions. That's like saying, okay, we have this pressing astronomy question, but only this half of the class is allowed to work on it. The rest of you are not allowed to participate. Why do you do that? Why would we do that? Diversity is something that matters. So for everyone that's in the audience, I got a quick quiz for you, all right? On the left-hand side of your screen, you see percentage undergraduate physics degrees awarded to women. There's country X at the top that is 60%. I'll tell you right now, the country X is either Germany, Iran, or USA. Country Y and country Z are at the bottom of that chart. So we're gonna do a little participation. Go ahead and type into the chat box. Let's just do country X for time. Which country do you think is country X? So type it into the chat box. And Kristen, will you report to me what they say, please?
Of course. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I'll give everybody a few seconds to go ahead and type that in. I'll take a sip of my coffee. All right, what do we got?
Any other thoughts? Any other thoughts about country X? Last call, last call. So far, the prevailing thought is that country X is Germany, Carlos.
Great, let's show the answer. Ready? Country X is Iran. And I bet a lot of you thought Iran would be at the bottom of this where Germany is, and Germany is we're at the top. It's not Germany, it's Iran. And I'll tell you this, the first time I saw this, I thought Germany was at the top too. And here's why. There are some nations like Albania, let me move this out of the way, where students are told what they're going to study based on their performance in school rather than their actual preference. They don't get a choice. They go, they get grades, and they say, you're going to be a physicist, you're going to be an engineer, you're going to be a chemist. India and Iran allow enrollments based upon free choice. And there is a high interest of women in physics in Iran and India. Why not in the US? It's a great question. It's a cultural thing. It is completely a cultural thing, and I'm going to get into this a little bit more, but it has nothing to do with ability, has nothing to do with interest or gender. It is purely cultural, which means we can change it if we want to. So let's look at the data. I'm going to show you a couple of graphs here. All right, and on the left, you see earned bachelor's degree in 2013 through 14. And on the left, you have women, and on the right, you've got men. And if you look at this, there's 5% more females than males that are non-STEM. And if you look at that, the female side, a significant percentage of those women in STEM are in health professions, biology, biomedical. And it's one of those things where we tend to say, well, it's a nature versus nurture, and women just, they're nurturers. And I don't believe that for a second. But let me show you the next chart now. AP exam participation. The yellow is female, the blue is male. And I don't know why this one went to 120%. That's not a real thing. So we're going to top it off at 100. And again, if you look at this, again, the biology is very strongly female, but calculus A, B, and BC is over 40% female. Computer science is a lot lower. Physics is a lot lower. Physics C, Physics 2, Physics 1, 40%. And again, psychology and statistics, math, another degree, another field where we don't have a lot of female representation. Show you one more. And this is the average assessment scores for the NAEP, which is an educational exam. And again, you can see female-male ratio in math, science, and technology and engineering literacy. And they're all right there. So there is no disparity. What does this mean? It means that boys and girls do not display a difference in their abilities to do STEM. Both genders can do it. The cause is social and environmental. Like I said, it is a cultural issue. There are differences consistently appear in girls' interest and confidence in STEM subjects, starting at a very young age. I've got a slide on this a little bit later on too. And finally, these differences can be linked to a negative self-perception that is enhanced by stereotypes. If you've ever seen somebody draw a scientist activity, you know that when students, especially grade school children, are asked to draw a scientist, they draw a white man. Drives me crazy. So what can we do to increase the diversity? Now, I'm going to show you two different sets of strategies, and they're both developed to increase the participation of women in STEM. However, what I have noticed is that these strategies work equally well for different races, different ethnicities, as well as different genders. So these come from Scigirls, the others come from a Step Up program, but don't feel that they are definitely have to be applied to just gender. This is where I must get my notes because there's a lot I want to say here, all right? There are 6 Scigirl strategies that work, and I'll be honest again, some work better than others, but they all work in getting more girls and people of color interested in science. So first, connect to STEM experiences to the girls' lives. So ask the girls about their backgrounds and interests in their community to try to better understand how to connect STEM to their lives. Whenever you're creating an activity, create an experience that allows the girls to explore issues or topics that they care about. And this is all research-based too. When any student is researching something that they are interested in, they're going to work harder than if it's something that has been given to them. Allow time for reflection during the activity. Ask the girls to write in a journal or talk to others about the connections to their lives. So this is the first Scigirl strategy. The second strategy is support girls as they investigate questions and solve problems using STEM practices. So give them opportunities to do science and engineering practices. Provide opportunities to engage in hands-on STEM activities, and give them an opportunity to make direct connections between STEM activities and the work of STEM professionals. So if you can tie it into what's going on in the real world, again, like step 1, but going in reverse, it's going to help. The third Scigirl strategy, empower girls to embrace struggle, overcome challenges, and increase self-confidence in STEM. One of the best things that I learned from a fellow educator is that it's okay to fail because fail stands for first attempt in learning. And I will tell you, I've been at the MagLab enough that I have seen enough experiments fail, and that is not a bad thing. A lot of experiments don't go the direction that is expected. A lot of experiments don't allow themselves to go all the way through. They may fall apart, they may fail. And that's all a learning process. You learn what doesn't work as well as what needs to be improved. So teach them that working through problems and having experiments fail is normal. Give time and space to allow them to struggle. When you struggle, you are learning. And sometimes, and I'm guilty of it too, I see my kids struggling to figure out a problem or an idea, and I want to step in and give them the answer, but I know I can't because the struggle leads to the learning. Give feedback, such as the process or the strategies and behaviors. So these are all things that you can do. Number 4, encourage girls to identify and challenge STEM stereotypes. And this is one of my favorites. I've got 2 favorites. This is one of them. Provide example of what STEM professionals look like. I know a couple of years ago, trending on Twitter was a hashtag, "This is what a scientist looks like," and it was empowered by women in science. And we saw oceanographers in scuba suits, marine biologists underwater, chemists in full suits, astronauts in their space outfits, and scientists is not just a person in the lab coat in a lab. You have geologists working in the field. You got paleontologists digging and dirty, and scientists don't look like you think scientists do. So challenge the stereotypes of the white man in the lab coat in a chemistry lab, because yes, that exists, but that's not all science, and it's not all scientists. And that one was easy for me to talk about because, like I said, it's one of my favorites. Number 5, emphasize that STEM is collaborative, social, and community oriented. It is so important that they get away from the stereotype that, again, a scientist works in a lab in front of a computer and that's all that they do. We have a coffee shop in the lobby of the MagLab because bringing scientists together encourages ideas. And I've seen physicists and cryogenic engineers talking and discussing and coming up with the next step for an experiment. And having a space to do that is important because science doesn't happen in a bubble. Additionally, once you finish the process of science, you go to a conference, you've got to present, you've got to socialize and network. And honestly, that may be some of the most important and most gratifying parts of science. So it's not just an experience in a lab by themselves with 2 people talking and that's it. There is a broad community and it all matters. It's so easy when I struggle to reach out to someone and say, hey, I'm having this idea, can you help me? And get an email back that says, have you tried this? I'm like, of course. So it's important that we have our networks. And then the last one is my absolute favorite. Provide opportunities for girls to interact with and learn from diverse STEM role models. And this is not just my favorite, but maybe the most important one. We're living in an age of Zoom right now. It is so easy to go on a laboratory's website and look up a scientist and say, oh my God, it's a Latina scientist. Let me put her in touch with my daughter. And bam, that connection is made and that could lead to a STEM career just like that. But if they don't see someone that looks like them, if they can't see themselves in that role, it's not gonna happen. It's very difficult to say, I'm a Hispanic man. That entire field is white men. I don't know if I fit in. So being able to see role models is important. Kristen, do we have any questions? Do you have any questions? I see a lot of nodding from you.
Oh, I mean, this is just, near and dear to my heart, Carlos. So I'm just responding in the way that I can't help but do. If you have questions about how to put these strategies into practice, right? That's what we're here to talk about today. We've heard some of these best practices before, but like, how do you actually do it? And if you have questions about that, I would love, we would love to have them. We would love to answer them. Carlos, you had some favorites in that list, and I'm sure it's part of your presentation at some point as you keep going through your slides, but are there things that you've seen that work better than others when you think about some of those principles and like really putting them into practice? I mean, failure is a great one, right? It is hard to watch. Some of you on the call today might be teachers, some of you might just be parents or grandparents or advocates. Can you speak to some of what's the responsibility of all of us? How can we all do better?
So to answer your first question about do some work better than others, the answer to that is yes and no. And here's why. Yes, some strategies work better than others. That is absolutely true. But it depends on the individual. It depends on the learner. So for some people, seeing that role model will connect them and that will be like, oh my God, she looks like me, I can do this. Where someone else it'll be the connection to their real life. I like makeup, chemistry is makeup, that's my connection. So we offer all the strategies because some are gonna work better for some learners and some will work better for other learners. So you gotta try them all and see. It's like throwing a bunch of stuff against the wall and seeing what sticks. Everybody's gonna learn a little bit differently. So there is no solid answer to that. As for the second part, one of my professors, Dr. Vic Sampson, when he was at FSU, he's at UT Texas now, he told me 3 simple words that have run through my head for my entire career. And that is that frustration leads to fruition. And you have to have that struggle. You have to have that moment of, oh my God, I can't do this. And then when it works, boom, you've got that that light in their eyes and everything makes sense and I made it work, and then boom, that's it. You can't give them to that out of the book. You can't give that to them in a lecture. It's one of those things that just needs to click in their head. And if you do it for them, they may get the answer, but they won't remember the answer. So that struggle, and sometimes it really breaks my heart, but that struggle is real. And I've had many field trips at the lab where a parent is chaperoning and they see their child struggling and they start to walk over and say, here, let me help you. And you're doing them a disservice. Getting the answer isn't what I'm looking for. It's that struggle to get to the answer that matters most.
Yeah, that's a great reminder, Carlos. All of us, providing too much help to our kids, right? We're not helping them in the long run.
Yeah, and the hardest thing for educators is that sometimes the best teaching you can do is less teaching.
Yeah.
And sometimes an outsider will look in and go, well, that teacher's not doing anything. They're doing exactly what they need to do in that way. And it's something that, again, it looks like you're not doing anything, but you may be doing the most by not doing anything.
Awesome. If you're listening and you have thoughts and questions and you want to, dive deeper into something, just add it into the chat and we will certainly get that addressed. But Carlos, I think we can go on to the next section now.
Good. So Step Up is a team to increase the participation of women in physics specifically. And so we're going to do one of the lessons on the website, which is Step Up Women in Physics. And if you go to the website, stepupphysics.org, you can register for Step Up, get access to everything for free, and then continue to get emails for conferences and workshops and other helpful things. So stepupphysics.org, again, it's free. And you can get access to these 3 activities: the career in physics lesson, which I'm not going to discuss today, though it is one of my favorites, the women in physics, which is what I'm going to discuss, and an everyday actions guide, which lets you reflect on your teaching and see what are you doing right and what can you improve upon. And I love and hate that one because sometimes I find my own faults that I hate to admit I have, but it is useful. So the Women in Physics activity has a couple of key steps to it. Step 1 is to have the students complete a pre-assignment, including an internet search for physicists. You read a couple of biographies that are all online, and then you complete a reflection activity. Then the guidelines for classroom discussion are introduced, and then you have an interactive presentation and discussion. And I'll tell you right now that this step right here, step 3, this is a bulk of what the activity is going to be. Step 4 is tricky. This is where you want students to contribute their own experiences with any struggles that they have. And it does write gender bias, but I've done this activity several times, and it very rapidly grows into cultural, race, ethnicity bias too. In step 5, students come up with strategies to support diversity in physics. And in step 6, they have a reflection on their views after the class discussion. I'm going to highlight some of the critical components of the lesson. And the most important one, and if any teachers are here listening to this right now, the most important part about the Women in Physics activity is that there is a level of trust with your students where they are free to say, hey, I had a bad experience by a teacher that may be in the same school. So that is important. Do not do this on the first day of school. This is something that needs to be built up to. Ensure that students review the comparative data. Ensure that students share their personal experiences with respect to gender, or again, race, ethnicity. And so these are performance objectives. And you want, at the end of it, students will be able to compare the challenges faced by women physics in the past to the challenges faced today. Students will give examples of gender inequalities with respect to science present in society today. Students will define unconscious bias, which is a great term right now, and give one example of the effect of unconscious bias. And then finally, students will explain their own views on the current state of women in physics. And again, this is able to be broadened up into race and ethnicity. So you start the lesson with step 1. This is something that you can do for homework. It is open up Google, whatever browser you're using, and type in famous physicists, and what do you see? Kristen, you want to tell me what you see?
Carlos, I don't see a lot of diversity. I can tell you that.
Yeah, I was doing a presentation the other day and talking about all the units of measurement in electricity and magnetism, and it's just a whole bunch of old dead white men.
Mhm.
And that's all that we've got right now. I will say this, I think my computer or my Google is getting to know me, because when I did it to prepare for this, Marie Curie and Lisa Randall showed up on my screen, and I was like, no, 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 you're not proving my point. But I definitely
Progress,
want
but
everybody to
progress.
try. Right. I do want everybody to try this and see if I'm not wrong, to see if this is what comes up for you. And again, this could be something that you can do in the first 5 minutes of class, or it's something that you can assign them as homework. The rest of the pre-assignment is to set the discussion guidelines. What are going to be the norms for this discussion? Now, Step Up does have a set of norms. Oh, as a reminder, we are here not to point fingers or blame, but to discuss gender issues with respect to famous physicists, and to see data about women in physics around the world and consider the role of culture and society. So what we're looking at is setting the norms, and you can download this poster on the Step Up website, or you can email stepuphysics@aps.org and say, hey, I'd like to get a poster. Can you mail me one? And they will mail you one. I've got one right down here. So that's something you can do. And what are the guidelines? Share airtime equitably. I have a hard time with that word. But make sure that everybody has a chance to participate and contribute. Value differences. Your view may not be the same as someone else's view, and that's okay. Argue using evidence. I love scientific argumentation, but it is not the same as name calling. So arguing is good in science. It's something that scientists do. It's another reason why we have the coffee shop downstairs. I've seen very entertaining arguments in the coffee shop downstairs, but again, it's not name calling, it is data driven. Make sure that everybody feels safe, and safe is not the same as comfortable. And so you want to make sure you have a safe space. And again, something that I picked up over my years is you want to make sure that you have a brave space so that somebody is able to say something. Discomfort is okay. You should feel awkward during parts of this lesson, and that's okay, because admitting that discomfort is the same as a frustration when you're doing science. When you become discomfortable with or uncomfortable with an idea, that means that you may be starting to learn and change. And then the last one is the most important one, is to own your impact. It doesn't matter if you say something offensive and you say, well, I didn't mean to offend you. That doesn't matter. If you said it and it offended someone, the damage is done. And saying, oh, I didn't mean to offend it does not undo the damage. So you have to own the impact of what you say. And this is something that applies to this lesson and may apply to the real world outside as well. Okay, so discussion during the Women in Physics activity. Why are women better represented in some fields over others? These are some of the points that you can bring up with the class to discuss, as well as, do you think there are gender differences in physics achievement in high school and in college? Another great question. Again, could be data driven. If you think there are differences, what are the causes? Okay, is it an exam bias? Is it the ability? Why do you think there's a difference that maybe males do better than females in science, or females don't do as well as males in just physics specifically? Give a reason. So this is how you can start that discussion. And again, you can use data to drive this argument. I showed you 3 charts earlier. I've got a couple more coming up. Here's some evidence you can point to. Physics degrees awarded to women. I believe right now the percentage of physics degrees that are awarded to women undergraduate is 20%. What's the academic achievements? Is there an issue with unconscious bias? And what are gendered professions, which is a great launching point for a discussion as well. And for the gendered professions, what I mean is, when you think of a nurse, what's the first thing you picture? And when you think of a doctor, what's the first thing you picture? And how come everybody always makes the nurse female and the doctor male? Why is that? Because I'm guilty of it too, but why do we do that? Here's that chart again with the assessment, with the test scores on there. And if you look at this, again, the test scores are even, they are equal. It's not an ability thing. Men and women achieve similar grades in high school and university physics. And I mentioned this before, the difference in science and math achievement is cultural. It is not an ability issue. Gender stereotypes about intellectual ability emerge early and influence children's interests. When I do my full training, I'll ask my audience, at what age do you start seeing that girls think, oh, I'm not good enough to do science? So real quick, type that into the chat box. At what age do you think that girls start thinking, I'm not good enough to do science? And I'll give you the answer in a few seconds. And Kristen, you're going to be my reader again, please.
Of course, of course. All right, we've got some guesses. 10, 22, 7.
5. At
Wow.
5 years old, you can start to see the difference that girls will say, I'm not smart enough to do this. And that just breaks my heart. At 5 years old, kindergarten. But that's what we've created here. And not we, but we. So what do we do? This is one of the most important steps of this, is to reflect upon that discussion. As everybody has that discussion about what they see and what they notice, have them reflect. And again, all this is downloadable on the workbook. It is just one lesson, but I think there's about 15 or 20 pages of materials because there's a lot of stuff that you can do in this lesson. And it's very easy for this to go 2 days. Who do you feel comfortable working with in class? Do you feel more comfortable in any particular class? Have you felt your abilities being questioned? So we start going into imposter syndrome, which is a very real thing, not just in science, but even at the MagLab. And here's one that I always see when I'm handing out materials in the class. I'll hold out the materials, and who do you think grabs the materials first? Boys grab the materials, and then you know what they say? They turn to the girl and they say, you write down the data. You be the secretary. And I've seen it, and I think unfortunately, maybe when I was younger, I may have been guilty of it. But it's something that I had never thought about, but I am aware of now. So when I'm handing out things and I see boys grab stuff, I will avoid their hands and give it to the girls. Step 4 is personal stories. And this is maybe the hardest thing. The students may have a hard time volunteering that, hey, I wanted to take the AP biology course, but my dad says that that's not a thing for girls to do. Those stories exist. And I'm sure if we have any women in the audience right now, they have had an experience like that. I know women that are very near and dear to me who are not in STEM professions because at some point in college, a professor steered them away from it by either explicitly telling them this is not a career for women or by implicitly saying, are you sure that's what you want to do? So those stories exist. And unfortunately, a lot of professors still hold that philosophy throughout the nation. So being able to hear the Me Too stories matters. Step 5 is lesson closure. And when we get to this point, we start coming up with strategies. What can I do to fix this? What can we do to encourage more women to do physics? And I'll tell you this, when I joined Step Up, I read the goal. And Kristen, the goal for Step Up is to get the undergraduate physics to be 50-50 in gender degrees awarded. And it's at 20% now. And I was like, that's gonna be difficult. But they've done the math because these are smart women who came up with this program. If every other high school physics teacher can get one more girl interested in physics, we'll be at that point. That's it. And when you say it like that, that's very doable. Not every physics teacher, every other one needs to get just one more girl interested, and we'll be at that 50-50 break. So what do we do to encourage that? can be done to support diversity in physics? What can you do specifically? Step 6 is the post assignment. And this is completing the Women in Physics post assignment. And again, you'll see that downloadable on the website. So you can go to stepupphysics.org/women and go directly to that PDF and download it. There are some aspects of some of the lessons that have been made virtual and online, and it is very, very good. The career in physics lesson has a matrix that is not very good on paper. I will be the first to admit. But they made it like a Qualtrics quiz online where you just click 4 things and boom, it gives you the result, and it's incredible. So what are we doing? At the MagLab, we have a diversity committee. We are pushing for diversity hires. We're trying to stop microaggressions happening in our community. And we're also offering our Scigirl summer camps and our Camp Tesla summer camps. The Scigirl summer camps obviously exist to see if we can get more girls interested in all the sciences. Maybe we put a little bit more emphasis on physics because we are a physics laboratory, but we do venture out into all fields, including coding, which is another one of these, I think an 82-18% split last I looked in computer science, which is why I led off with that topic. And we talk about it too in Camp Tesla, because one of the more important things besides increasing the confidence of girls is making sure that there are allies there to help them along the way, because it takes a village. It's not going to be one person on their own. So these are all things that we cover in our summer camps. And so yes, we're going to teach science. Yes, we're going to bond. We're going to have a lot of fun. But hey, we're going to talk about these barriers too. And when you know that the barriers are coming, you can recognize them and not be caught in that moment that you freeze up and you don't say what to do, and all of a sudden you're not in the STEM career anymore. So just being aware of these roadblocks is important. Trying to make a smooth segue here, and I don't think there is one. But we've got our virtual escape rooms coming up, which I'm still pumped up about. And Carrie Roberts is building this, and she sent me the link to test it for her. And I kind of don't want to because I want to experience it with my kids. So session 1's going to be Saturday, 4 p.m., right, Kristen?
Yeah, we're going to have a Saturday session, and then we have a game night session the next Thursday, the 4th. So, you know, Saturday afternoon or Thursday, you can come and do the escape room. If you don't finish it on Saturday, come back on Thursday, and you can complete it. So there's a lot. Yeah, we're going to have a lot of fun. It's a great way to just have some fun and feel some of the challenges and that frustration, right, Carlos? But also get to explore, you know, where it gets at the end with the excitement of achieving your goals. So Carlos, I have a couple of questions, and listen, if any of you have questions about anything that Carlos has talked about or something that you wanted to talk about that we didn't cover today, you know, put them in the chat. We would love to chat more about all of this. So Carlos, you know, I'm a parent, right? You're a parent. I would guess we have some parents joining us today. You know, I don't have that much control over what happens in my daughter's classroom, right? So I don't have control over whether she's experiencing the challenges that she needs, or seeing that teamwork, or meeting those role models, or a lot of the things that you talked about. So can you give us, you know, parents who would love to help encourage our own children to pursue these STEM paths, or at least not to be afraid of pursuing these STEM paths, or not to feel excluded from these paths? What can we do, right? What's available to us?
So there's this thing called STEM capital, and STEM capital is basically how much STEM involvement, or what's the word I'm looking for?
Exposure, experience.
That's exactly the word I was looking for. Thank you, Kristen. Yeah, so it's one of those things where the answer has changed over the last year. Because if you asked me in February of last year, I would have said yes. Take them to museums, take them places, go on nature hikes, show them that science is engineering with Legos, but it's also observing animals on a walk. So The answer now is show them STEM online, show them STEM on TV. There are opportunities there, and there are a lot of great STEM toys that are out there too. I just got my kids a growing kit where they plant these microgreens, and in 10 days you can have crops that you can cut and put on sandwiches and just eat raw. 10 days to grow something that you can do. It's fantastic. So just show them that STEM is not just one thing working in a lab again, connected to their everyday lives. One of the other things I do is I check what my kids are doing at school. I'm like, okay, what are you doing for science? Oh, okay. I caught my daughter talking about magnets the other day. I'm like, you better get that right. And she's been listening to me say it so many times. She was like, she knows it all. I got it. But again, it is so much more than just that. But give them those opportunities. And again, my son is into video games, and I'm like, great, play video games. Let me get you this coding toy and introduce you to the world of coding, because that's the field that is exploding right now. And if he becomes a computer coder, hopefully he'll remember that, hey, I have a sister. I'm going to treat women well and encourage them to participate as well. So it's about making allies too, but also showing them that, hey, it's all around us. It's not just in a book. And like I said, there's so many great STEM toys right now too. So I'm jealous of those.
It is a really fun time to be into science, isn't it? Like, it's so fun. There's some questions about Camp Tesla in the chat that I just want to make sure to ask. I sort of answered them, a few of them on my own, but a question about Camp Tesla, just access, right? Camp Tesla is a camp that's open to everyone, right? It's boys and girls. And can you talk a little bit about that? And just maybe compare it to, like, I mean, are the boys, just compare sort of our Camp Tesla and our Scigirls programs.
Yeah, they're very similar.
Yes.
They're not all that different, which is why this summer, everybody's got a choice to do one or the other, but not both, because they are going to be very similar this year. But yeah, just an opportunity to come. What I want the students to get out of it is a chance to do some science, a chance to meet some friends that think like they do, make new friends. Find other science-minded people, and let's be honest, find other nerdy kids, other geeky kids. I mean, when we did the camp in person, we used to have crazy sock day. We had wear your favorite geeky t-shirt day. I always wore my Transformer shirt because that's my favorite thing. But it's an opportunity for them not just to do science, but to meet other science and other scientists. So we bring in a lot of role models too. And of course, we always bring in diverse role models so that everybody can say, okay, I've seen somebody that looks like me, I can do that too.
And Carlos, is there a cost for Camp Tesla? I know that there are some scholarships available too, so maybe talk a little bit about that.
So there is a cost for the camps. We're trying to figure out what that cost is right now, but the cost covers the materials. So you pay for the camp, but really you're paying for the stuff that we're gonna give you. There are always scholarships available for anybody that needs them. I have never and will never turn away a camper because of finances. So if you want to do the camp, apply for the camp, we will figure it out.
All right, that's great advice right there. That's great advice. And I also, it's a good opportunity to give a little bit of a plug for a future open house event, actually. On March 6th at 11 a.m., there's going to be a STEAM camp fair. So if you're looking for, summer experiences in the STEM or STEAM universe, STEAM is science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and arts, then come to that camp fair, because a lot of those experiences are here in our community, in the Tallahassee community, if you're joining us locally. Some of them may be online. So, welcome to people from all over the world. And many of them are free or have scholarship options. So make sure to join us for that on the 6th to learn more about some camp opportunities. What else? What are your other questions in the chat? I'm going to say, kind of last call, is Camp Tesla virtual? That's a great question.
God, that is such a good question. We will know in a week is the best answer I can give right now. I have a feeling that the answer is going to be yes, but I can't say that with 100% certainty right now because my world was just thrown upside down. So we're going to figure that out right now.
So yes, stay tuned. New developments released just today, and we're exploring what they might mean. So
yeah, Kristen, when I was talking about STEM toys, I had to reach over because you know how much I love Transformers, and something like this, which is just a little robot guy, is so much more because the back of him is the spaceship, and he completely converts into a spaceship. And somebody will look at it and go, "Well, it's just a toy." I'm like, the engineering to make this both things without it just being a spaceship with a robot plastered on the bottom. This is incredible. And maybe that's why I love these guys so much, because there is some beauty in being able to fold this up like origami and it being two different toys, a spaceship and a robot. And I've always loved just the engineering. And honestly, I find it very relaxing to be able to change between the modes for these guys. So.
Oh, I love it. Maybe someone watching is going to be inspired to build more transformable stuff in the world. I would have thought with a universe of transformer toys that we would have created a future of more transforming things, but opportunities.
It's a lot more than you think. I mean, the solar panels on the International Space Station, all of that was born out of origami. Because to be able to have it small to launch, but then big to work in space, that's a lot of the engineering that this is very, very much based on. So there are connections there, and we see things like that. Like I've seen couches that turn into bunk beds and tables that turn into dining room tables, and more these transformer things are happening.
Carlos, I want to ask you a question that I always struggle with, just personally. And it's kind of where some of these strategies can sometimes feel in conflict with just like what I know and what I've experienced and other strategies. So when I was a student many, many moons ago, and I do not have a STEM degree, but I remember in college being encouraged to pursue a degree in economics, and I was not considering it. It did not occur to me, but I did well in the class, and the professor encouraged me to do it. And I have a dual degree in marketing and economics. And so I'm just trying to balance these strategies that you've shared with us today, right? About giving children space to fail with that encouragement that some students need to know that that they have a place there, right? That was so just important for me to go down that path, right? That someone who lived it and knew it and did it thought that I could succeed. And I just want you to kind of maybe, I don't know, help us figure out the right balance there.
Yeah. So you just mentioned three different Scigirl strategies: the making it connect to your daily life, having the space to fail and encourage struggle, and then the role model. And so, as I mentioned earlier, different strategies are going to have a different effect on different learners because we all learn a little bit different. Both me and my brother are drastically different learners, and we're siblings. So it's all about having them all as tools in a toolbox, and then being able to pull out the right tool when you need it. And sometimes you don't know which is the right tool at the right moment, and you try multiple tools until you see that spark in the student's eyes. Like one of my favorite things is that aha moment where they're struggling, and then all of a sudden that happens. And right there, that little window right there is like, okay, I got it. They got it.
I love that. I love that. It is really fun in the summer, in a traditional summer, when we have our campers around at the MagLab, and you can watch them, making connections as humans and making connections as future scientists. And there is just so much excitement and energy just from all of those programs. I encourage anyone who's interested in those camps to apply. Applications are open now, right, Carlos?
They will be up soon. As soon as I figure out the format, I'll be able to make the application.
That's right. So stay tuned if you're interested in one of those summer programs. Camp Tesla, there's a question about when Camp Tesla is. It's usually in July, right, Carlos?
What we're really trying to do is is being able to mix them up. So Camp Tesla usually happens in June, and July is usually reserved for Scigirls. But we're trying to mix it up a little bit so that we have at least one Tesla in July and one Scigirls in June. So to be able to offer Scigirls in June for the first time ever is something that we're excited about.
So stay tuned for dates, right? They'll be posted. I think I put the link in the chat earlier,
Yep.
all of our summer camp programs. So
keep visiting the website for the more information.
yeah.
And as soon as I know, you'll know.
Whether there's specific dates or, last summer, for example, Carlos and his team kind of pivoted and provided a whole different model of programs. So just stay tuned, follow us on Facebook and Twitter and all of that. We are sure to announce it as soon as we know what we can work with, right, Carlos?
That's right. That is absolutely right.
This was such a fantastic session, and I appreciate this conversation about how we can really provide more inclusiveness in the sciences. I hope that this has been helpful and important to all of you. If you've been here, stick around after we end the webinar. There is a survey link that'll pop up. We'd love to know what you thought about this session. If there's anything that you didn't get to talk about or wanted to cover, you can reach out to Carlos directly or myself, and I'll put you in contact with him. And I hope that we see some of you at a future open house experience. In fact, there's one later tonight, although this experience is actually transcends open house. This is our monthly science night, and it's led by a MagLab researcher, a female researcher at the MagLab. Brilliant. Yulia Smith is going to talk a lot about basics of magnets and magnetism.
Yep,
so
and we've got Dr. Ernesto Bosque joining us too.
I love it. I love it. Fantastic group of people. So if you're looking to, expose some of your young people, your children, students to some physical STEM hands-on learning, come tonight to Science Night or any of the Science Nights. There's still a few more left in our Science Night series. So we hope to see some of you soon. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Bye, everyone.